Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. So, this video is all about the upcoming full moon in Cancer happening on Monday, January 13th at 5:26 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, this is our first full moon of 2025. And if I had to sum up the energy of this full moon, it would be change. And this change may come about in a way that may be a little uncomfortable and that may be a little triggering, but that may be exactly what we need right now. It may be the kick in the ass, essentially, that we need in order to make changes and in order to figure out what we need and what we don't. And of course, the fact that full moons illuminate, they show us a lot. And I feel like this particular full moon is going to show us a lot about our emotions. All right. So if you want to know more about everything that this new moon has to offer, stick around. You definitely don't want to miss this. All right, so let's begin by talking about some basics, right? Let's talk about Cancer energy and let's talk about full moon energy. So, Cancer is a cardinal sign, meaning that it is concerned with initiation, with starting things. It's the first water sign that we encounter in the zodiac, all right? And so water has everything to do with emotions. It has everything to do with our inner world. Cancer specifically is an energy that's very psychic. It's very intuitive and it's very in touch with its emotions. And the moon is actually at home in Cancer. So the energy of the moon while in Cancer, it's heightened, it's very potent. And so that typically makes for a very kind of emotional moon. You know, full moons is like when, they like to say that the full moons bring out the lunatics and all the crazy people, right? So when we have a full moon in its home sign of Cancer, it can be very triggering. It can be very emotional. It can bring out the crab in everyone, where everyone's feeling extra sensitive. Everyone's feeling, they're in their feelings and all of that stuff. And a lot of times in society, we tend to make that into a bad thing, right? Like, you don't want to be overly emotional. You don't want to be a crybaby, although Cancer is very far from a crybaby. They're just people who are really in touch with their emotions. But I say all of this to say that this full moon is going to be emotional. So if you're someone who struggles with feeling your emotions or you just don't like to, this full moon could be somewhat uncomfortable for you, okay? Now, full moons are all about illumination and culmination. So either something that's been hidden will come to light, or something that you've been working on will come to a completion. The full moon is the stage of the lunar cycle where things come to fruition. And if we're talking about like manifestation, it's the time in the manifestation cycle when your manifestation comes to fruition, right? So full moon in Cancer, on sort of the culmination side of things, anything that you've been nurturing, particularly wherever Cancer is in your natal chart, or let's say at the new moon in Cancer, which happened about 6 months ago, maybe you started something at that point and you've been nurturing it ever since. Now it's going to come to fruition, right? So you may I guess the best example would be like planting a seed, right? You planted the seed at that new moon in Cancer, and now the seed has sprouted a flower or a fruit or whatever it is, right? So that's sort of the surface level definition of that. However, I think that for the majority of us, this full moon in Cancer, it's going to bring up some emotions that we're not necessarily comfortable with. And one of those emotions is anger. All right, I'll get to that when I talk more about the astrology. But suffice it to say, getting in touch with your emotions is good, right? Because we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and emotions play a big part in our overall being, right? And Cancer is a sign that's concerned with our basic emotional needs. Like I said, Cancer is the first of the water signs. So when it comes to things like home, shelter, food, acceptance, love, the things that we need basically as humans to feel secure, to feel safe even, are governed by Cancer. And so when we have a full moon in Cancer, this could really be a time when you're seeing whether those basic emotional needs are being met or not. Okay. Now, this is interesting considering what is happening in the world right now, specifically what is happening in the United States. At present, today is Sunday, January 12th, right? And over the last couple of days, all you can hear about on the news is the wildfires in California, specifically in Los Angeles, right? And, the universe, astrology, it really has a way of showing us what's going on right now, because Cancer is also the sign of home, right? Your physical dwelling, where you call home, your headquarters, your home base, is governed by Cancer. And these wildfires have been homes, right? It's been a lot of residences and homes that have unfortunately caught fire. Now, this very much has to do with the astrology, because this full moon is actually conjunct Mars, which is retrograde. But again, I'll get more into that in the astrology portion of this video. But there is this element of purification that's happening right now when it comes to our external environment that is really shedding light on whether our basic emotional needs are being met. And you may be thinking, well, home is a basic emotional needs, and God forbid you lose your home, right? It's like, okay, I don't have this thing. It's like my basic emotional need for stability, security, and shelter is not being met. However, the one thing I will say about everything that's going on, and one of the sort of ideas, issues, or concepts related to this full moon in Cancer, is that your physical dwelling, or the physical things that you have in life, are not necessarily indicative of your basic emotional needs. Now, yes, we all do need shelter. We all do need a home, right? But there's something under the surface of that. It's not just the home itself. It's not just the possessions, right? What truly feels like home? Who truly feels like home? Where can you feel safe and secure? With whom can you feel safe and secure? I know that is a question that many people are pondering right now amidst everything that's going on, but I do think it's very indicative of what this full moon in Cancer is asking all of us at this point in time, right? And again, this brings up a lot of emotions. This is an emotional time for many, right? But this is getting us to clarify what we need, clarify our basic emotional needs. All right. So that's the full moon in Cancer, sort of in a nutshell. All right. So now let's get into the numerology and talk about how the degree of this full moon in Cancer is going to, what kind of energy that sort of brings. All right. So this full moon in Cancer is happening at the 23rd degree of Cancer. 2 + 3 is 5. So the numerology for this full moon in Cancer is number 5. And 5 is the number of change. It's this energy of pivoting. It's this energy of sort of curiosity and the need for variety, right? Above all else, to boil it down to its very essence, the number 5 is all about change, okay? And now change can be a difficult thing. There hasn't been a point where we haven't struggled with change, right? At some point in our lives, maybe because we were so attached to something, or maybe because the thought of something new or something unknown or something uncertain was scary. So we'd rather stay where we're at, okay? But change is inevitable. Number 1, change is the only constant. Number 2, and change, at least at this point in time, change is about getting into alignment. So many of us are waking up to our true potential, to our truest selves, to our truest desires. And of course, the astrology has been supporting this for quite some time, but many of us are now conscious of who we are, what we want, what we're here to do. Yet, it's like we're starting to wake up to this new life, and our old life, there's still some attachments there. There's still some, I want to bring this with me on this new journey. And sometimes the universe is like, but you can't. You can't fill old wineskins with new wine, right? Isn't that what the Bible says? And so change is necessary for us to be in alignment. And that's exactly what's going on with this full moon in Cancer, right? It's like our basic comforts, our basic needs are sort of being either highlighted or they're being like jostled or they're being disrupted at this time to say, listen, this can't come with you. Or your definition of this right now is not congruent with who you're becoming and where you're going. And that's why change is so necessary. Okay. It's also, the number 5 is also, it can be a number of sort of aimlessness, if that's a word, sort of being directionless, sort of moving, but not necessarily with a destination. And sometimes in thinking about change, I feel like sometimes when we first begin changing and when we first begin pivoting, that's what it feels like sometimes, doesn't it? Like, you have to change. You may not know the destination or even the direction, but you've got to move. You have to make some kind of movement. You have to make some kind of pivot. And so if you find that this full moon is having you change, understand that it is okay if you don't know how to change yet or what to change into yet. The fact that you are cognizant of change, period, is a good sign. So if something becomes illuminated at this full moon where it's like, listen, this isn't working anymore, or in some cases, something may no longer be available to you, right? Full moons I talked about before, how they culminate things. And sometimes that culmination is a closed door. Sometimes that culmination is, okay, this is done. You can't return to this. Or this environment is no longer conducive to your stability. It's like what was once a yes may turn into a no now. And understanding that it's a no can bring up fear, can bring up anxiety, because it's like, okay, this is not available to me, but what is? I don't know what's available to me. I don't know what direction I'm going in. And that is okay. This full moon is just saying, listen, there's this need for change. Now, this coincides with the North Node moving into Pisces, which did so yesterday on Saturday, January 11th. Okay. And the North Node in Pisces is like, listen, you don't need to know the destination to start moving. Just get in the car and start driving. Figuratively, not literally, okay? But you don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step and spirit will illuminate your next steps. This is the season that we're entering with the North Node in Pisces. So when I say that it's okay if you don't know the destination, when I say that it's okay if you know that you have to change but you don't know how, ask spirit to guide your steps. Ask spirit to show you the way and then follow. Cancer is a water sign. Pisces is a water sign. And with the full moon in Cancer coinciding with this North Node in Pisces, it's like, go with the flow. Literally go with the flow, even if you don't know where this flow is taking you. Right? It's about surrendering. So on the one hand, you've got the full moon in Cancer that's like, listen, this isn't working anymore. This is not available to you. This is unsustainable, this thing. Or maybe you've completed this thing. Now what? You spent 6 months or even longer nurturing something and now it's come to fruition. And then it's like, okay, now what? That's also how this change can come about with this full moon. Right? Okay, I put my heart and my soul into this thing and now it's grown. The thing that's coming to mind, what I'm seeing in my mind's eye right now is children, right? You spend years nurturing them, building them up, providing stability for them. And then what happens? They get older and they move out. And then it's like, okay, now what? Now what do I do with this energy that I was using to nurture something? Okay, and this is a perfect segue into the astrology for this new moon. I'm sorry, for this full moon. All right. So, in terms of the astrology concerning this full moon in Cancer, there's three things. Let me say four. There's four things that I want to highlight. Number one, the full moon is going to be conjunct Mars retrograde, and this is a major component of this full moon. Number two, the full moon is going to be sextile to Uranus and Taurus. Uranus is also retrograde. And then number three, this full moon is going to be trine to Neptune in Pisces. Okay. And then the fourth thing I've already mentioned is that this full moon is also going to be loosely trine to this north node in Pisces. Okay. So first, let's talk about this full moon conjunct Mars retrograde. Now, I did a whole video on Mars retrograde, which I'll link in the description box below, so you can check it out if you haven't already. But Mars retrograde, it's about taking the energy that we've been putting out, right? This external energy that we've been sort of exerting, and we're taking it and we're bringing it inward. Now, one of the main facets of Mars retrograde period is that it's a time of conservation. It's when you stop, right, and conserve your energy. Now, the fact that this full moon is conjunct Mars retrograde, okay, both in the sign of Cancer. Like I said, Cancer is about nurturing, right? It's about mothering, it's about tending to, it's about developing. But this development has been happening on the inside, right? It's this development of, it's what you pour your love into, what you pour your emotions into, right? Like how a mother would nurture a child, or how you would nurture and develop a plant even, right? This full moon may shed light on perhaps something that you've been nurturing, okay? And you're going to want to look at where Cancer is in your natal chart. This may clue you in as to what you've been nurturing, but this full moon conjunct Mars retrograde in Cancer may shed light on what you've been nurturing, and has it been worth it? Or has your energy been put to good use? Let's say that, okay? Let's say, and let me put this in sort of an abstract sort of way, right? Again, to use planting as an example. You planted a seed a while ago, right? Thinking that it would bear a particular kind of fruit, only to discover, perhaps at this full moon, that the fruit that it has developed may not be the fruit that you anticipated, or maybe it's the wrong kind of fruit, or maybe you don't like it, it doesn't taste good, whatever, right? That is useful information because it lets you know, okay, I don't need to put any more effort into this thing. I don't need to nurture this thing anymore because it doesn't bear the type of fruit that I want. Or it could also let you know that, listen, this type of seed bears this type of fruit, so I'm not going to do this again, or maybe I need to switch up how I nurture this thing, whatever. Either way, this full moon is going to give you information on what you've been putting your energy into and whether it's worth it to you, whether it's in alignment with your truest desire, okay? The other thing that I will say about Mars retrograde, particularly the fact that Mars is retrograde in a sign like Cancer, is that this full moon may be very triggering, emotionally speaking. Whatever happens at this full moon may elicit anger, rage. Mars can sometimes be a violent planet, so there may be issues of violence involved. I mean, these wildfires in California, Mars is the planet of fire. And so it's no surprise that this is what's going on right now. But maybe there is a fire in your life, figuratively, right? And it's bringing up anger, frustration, rage. Or maybe something in your life is ending. Something is literally being purified by fire, and you're left to sort of examine the emotions that goes along with all of that, right? Emotionally triggering. This Mars retrograde is really going to have many people in their feelings, many people dealing with a lot of tough emotions, but that also serves as important information. Remember, Cancer is all about our basic emotional needs. And although something may be ending, maybe it's not in alignment with your basic emotional needs. Or maybe you need to really understand how anger, frustration, and those kind of emotions can help effect change in your life, right? When they say that phrase, light a fire under somebody's ass, the point of that particular phrase is getting someone to do something, right? Lighting a fire under someone's ass means getting them to take action, perhaps when they otherwise wouldn't. And so maybe whatever's happening right now at this full moon is doing the same thing. It's lighting a fire under your ass to make some changes. All right. And then this sort of feeds into one of the other facets astrologically with respect to this full moon in Cancer, is that this full moon is going to be sextile to Uranus. Uranus is the planet of surprise. So this full moon may be happening, or this full moon may be a time when you're experiencing something very surprising, something very unexpected, right? Uranus is very much concerned with change, okay? But the way that Uranus affects change is suddenly, surprisingly. It's getting you to pivot quickly, right? Now, the fact that the full moon is sextile to Uranus, right, means that this change provides a positive opportunity. Now, trust and believe, it may not feel positive in the moment when you're experiencing it. However, it is this situation where, okay, if this didn't happen, then I likely wouldn't have made that change. I likely wouldn't have moved. I likely wouldn't have taken action, right? Because that's how Uranus works. Uranus literally lights a fire under your ass. And with Uranus being retrograde in Taurus, it's like pushing you out of your comfort zone, right? Like I said, there's a certain level of comfort that Cancer energy brings. It's that comfort of, having your emotional needs met, right? And perhaps even if those basic emotional needs aren't being met, the fact that you've been dealing with that unfulfillment, I don't know if that's a word even, but you know what I mean, right? Perhaps your needs haven't been fulfilled for so long, you got complacent and used to the fact that, okay, this is what it is. And perhaps whatever's happening at this full moon in Cancer is like, no, what you've been experiencing is not in alignment with your basic emotional needs. And I got to push you out of that comfort zone so that you can get in alignment with that. All right. So you kind of have to expect the unexpected with this full moon. Something may pop up that's emotionally triggering, but it gets you to move. It gets you to pivot, right? Or this could be, let's take it in the other direction. This could be something coming to a completion in a very great way, in a surprising way. Maybe you've been nurturing something for 6 months, thinking that it's going to take 2 years to happen, and then boom, it happens at this full moon in Cancer. That's a great feeling too. So it's not just gloom and doom with this particular full moon. It's just surprising. So expect the unexpected. Now, the last thing I will say is that this full moon is going to be trine to Neptune in Pisces, okay? Now, this is like, okay, going with the flow. It very much has that same energy of the North Node in Pisces that I was talking about before. Whatever this change is, let Spirit direct it. Let Spirit guide your steps. Let Spirit tell you, okay, get in the car, we're going here. Or we're taking a left here. Like, let Spirit take the wheel, right? But Neptune also is like big picture thinking. So whatever's going on right now may feel very sort of immediate. And what I mean by that is you're very much concerned with, okay, this thing right in front of me. I'm dealing with this particular issue. But the fact that the full moon is trine to Neptune is like, listen, you have to keep the bigger picture in mind. And because it's trine, I feel like that there may be instances around the time of this full moon when you get glimpses of the bigger picture. What my mind's eye is showing me right now is scrolling through Instagram, right? And although you have this issue or this sudden happening brought about by this full moon happening right now, it's like you're scrolling through Instagram and you see something that reminds you of the bigger picture. Maybe, you got to notice that your rent is going up and you can't afford it, right? And you're like, what am I going to do? And then you're scrolling on Instagram and you see this like big mansion type house in Texas, right? And you're like, yeah, I want that. I've always wanted that. But it seems kind of incongruent to what you're experiencing in the moment, right? In the moment, you're like, I don't even know how I can afford this apartment because the rent is going up. But then, Spirit via Instagram feed is like, don't forget This is the goal. And yes, it may be uncomfortable in the moment because we have to figure out how we're going to pay this rent. But this is not your final destination. Your final destination is much bigger. And we're kind of giving you the leeway in order to move closer to that final destination. That's what's happening at this full moon. All right. Hopefully that made sense. And then to wrap it all up with the astrology, the North Node is now in Pisces. And that's about surrendering, letting go. It's like, all right, this thing is happening right now. I'm going to do my best to navigate it. But ultimately, I know that I kind of just have to go with the flow. You know, I know that you've heard what I'm about to say before, but I want you to understand there's nothing that happens that is not for your good. And I know that that can sound crazy. I know that it can almost sound insulting, right? Because sometimes we go through some really tough shit. And it's just like, how could this possibly be for my good? But trust me, it is. Trust me, it is. It's either giving you something that you need, or it's showing you something that you need to see and learn. Everything is information. And that's why I love full moons the most, because they illuminate things. Things that maybe we haven't seen, things that have been hidden, things that we've been ignoring. And that full moon is like, listen, I need you to look at this. What was that movie? I think it was called Bird Box, right? And at one point you had those people like really keeping those other people's eyes open. Like, you need to see this, right? Because once they saw it, that's when they got messed up and whatever. But I don't mean it. I don't mean it in that regard right now. What I'm saying is the full moon is like, listen, you need to see this. This is important information, right? Like, how can you move forward if you don't necessarily understand what is going on around you, what's happening right now? That's what full moons are great for. Okay. And so along those lines, you know, typically in my moon series videos, I like to talk about manifestation and what each moon sort of brings with that. But the message for full moons is always the same. Full moons are about observation. This isn't the time to be, you know, trying to manifest, because that's not the part of the lunar cycle that we're in. This is the part where it's like, okay, what seed is, what fruit has been produced from this seed that we have planted? What has come about? What's the result? Maybe there is a result and it's exactly in alignment with the seed that you planted. Good for you. That's information too. It's like, okay, I planted this seed. I did these things. This is what happens. Perfect. Maybe, like I said before, you planted a seed and now the fruit that it bears is not the seed. It's not what you intend. It's not what you want. That's information, because it lets you know either there's some tweaking that needs to be done, or not to plant that seed in the future. Or perhaps there's no fruit. And that lets you know either you didn't plant the seed or you didn't tend to it in the way that you needed to. So either way, whatever happens at full moons, it's always information. So observe what's going on. Observe what shows up. Especially with this full moon sextile to Uranus, it's like something out the blue may happen. And again, it's going to be so that you can pivot, so that you can change. Because again, to wrap this all up, it's all about our basic emotional needs and getting us in alignment with that. So whatever you need to do to change, whatever the universe is showing you at this full moon, what do I want to say? Whatever transpires at this full moon, take it as information and then be ready to act accordingly. That's what I want to say. All right. So hopefully all of this information made sense. Hopefully this puts you in the best position possible to take advantage of this energy that is at our disposal at this upcoming full moon in Cancer. All right, my loves, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care.